Star Trek fan, yeah, start from 4. That's where I'd start too. But
Yeah.
anyway, we don't want to get too deep into the Star Wars conversation. If you're joining us in the replay of this, craziness happened just before.
Trina, I'm just taking Beeline to tryouts in April. I'm hoping to take 5 later in the year when he's a little bit more trained, but thank you for asking.
You did run him in the competition and it looked great.
I did.
Recently,
He is. He's doing so good.
So I'm just going to double check on that question from Star Trek, but maybe you can talk a little bit about like some of the common challenges that people may have, or maybe when they realize they have a problem with jumping up.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why we wanted to choose jumping up as a topic is it's a pretty common issue that a lot of dogs will have. And one of the things that we'll often talk about in our programs are specifically about the types of behaviors that are sort of fall into the category of being a self-rewarding behavior. And those typically are some of the hardest behaviors to actually change in a dog, because it's not like, some other behaviors that the dogs have to learn to find rewarding over time. Things like jumping, barking, digging, chewing, all of those types of things, those dogs just like find them naturally rewarding. And if they get a lot of rehearsal of being able to successfully portray these behaviors like jumping up, and that happens time after time after time after time, it actually becomes even more challenging to try to correct these behaviors. So it's a pretty common thing. And then dogs will jump up for a number of reasons. Sometimes they're doing it simply out of pure joy and excitement. They're just too hyper and don't have good emotional controls, or they're just reacting because they're so excited. Some dogs will do it because they're being naughty and they're trying to jump up to steal something and run away with it. Some dogs will do it because they're being pushy and they're trying to, establish, their stance in that moment, and they're trying to sort of make themselves a bit bigger and control the situation. So there's lots of reasons that that dogs will jump up. And to be perfectly transparent with you, our dogs will jump up on us, but we teach our dogs to do it as a trick. Now, this is totally personal preference, but my dogs have a fun trick that I do where I say jump up, and we'll lift our arms up, and our dogs will jump right up into our arms and we'll catch them. Mind you, our heaviest dog is only about 45 pounds or so it's not too big of a deal. But typically, we do not allow our dogs to jump up in any other situation. And I don't want to mistake that for not allowing our dogs to be joyful and excited and wiggly and all of the things, because we want them to be excited to see people and that type of thing. However, we do want to make sure that their first instinct is not to jump all over the first person that they see, or all over us, or whatever the circumstance might be when it comes to people. However, when it comes to counters, when it comes to coffee tables, when it comes to places where food items might be, or things that they could get a hold of and swallow that could be dangerous, those are never on the table. We teach them right from the get-go that that's not allowed. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on tonight, is sort of the how-to of how to work through these and sort of give you a deeper understanding as to why they happen. And then also why a lot of people think they're doing the right things to correct jumping. But there's a couple key factors that people don't realize that literally change the game as to whether you're going to get success. Because a lot of people say, well, I correct my dog and I yell at my dog and I've done this and I've done that. But there's a few small things that people miss that really make the difference. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight.
Yeah, for the health of it, one of our Hard Talk supporters. What if there are surfaces I want the puppy to jump on, but not jump on people or furniture? Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. In fact, let's start with counters, and because I think it's a good stationary skill that you can set up the dog to train through. It's also going to give you better timing, and then we'll go to jumping on people.
Sure.
But to start with a little bit more control is going to be really important. It's also going to make you better at training the exercise.
Yeah.
So I think right off the top, we use the term off instead of down or anything like that. We use the term off. Now, why do we use the term off?
We use the word off because our dogs are trained to do a different behavior on the word down. So if I was to say down to my dog, I would expect them to lie down. Now, if you don't use down as a command for your dog, you could go ahead and use that if you want to. But we use the word off because it's the word that means the same thing all of the time. We don't have different meanings for it. But we try to go one step further with our word off. Off basically means don't jump. It doesn't mean get off.
That's really important that you understand that. It means don't jump.
Now, I have actually said to my dogs, get off if they're off on, if they're on something that I don't want them to get on anymore, or I'll use like my release word, like, okay, and they should get off of it. However, our off command is more like a warning to the dog. So if we are seeing any pre-cues that our dogs are about to jump up, we're able to tell them off, which makes them understand not a good idea. And then that might be followed with another command that would give them maybe a more, a better choice in that moment. If it's jumping on people, I might say like off and then ask my dog to sit. If it's, on the counter, jumping on the counter, I might tell them off, leave it. Go get your bone or go and lie down or something. Tell them to do something different. But off is a warning. It's not the correction itself.
Right. Yeah, I think, you covered a few things there that I think are really important. The best time to interrupt the behavior is before the dog has committed the crime, before they've jumped up. What do you think are some signals, some signs that your dog is about to jump? And let's talk about specifically in the
counters.
You're in there making dinner maybe, and you've put some stuff on the island, or there's something on the counter, and your dog's just sort of meandering around. What sort of indicators would you have that you're going to become a mind reader? And if you can interrupt the dog at this point, your dog's going to wonder, how on earth did he or she know what I was thinking? How did they know exactly what I was about to do? I better do some listening. I really need to pay attention. You're going to see some things like air scenting. Mm-hmm. You might see your dog stand absolutely still and sort of just like reading the environment. Your dogs, unless you have a Irish wolf hound who's a couple of years old,
Great Dane,
or a Great Dane, your dog is likely going to coil, so that they can, before they jump up. But the earlier the better. The earlier you can interrupt them, the earlier you can give them the information to off and to not jump up, the more likely you're going to be successful. So there's a couple things that you need to do, and we're talking specifically about counters. We're going to get to people, but a lot of these skills are easily transferred.
Madison says the beetle eyes staring.
Right. Yeah, that's a great example.
Eveline says, no, it attracts the dog. That's actually a really, really good point, Eveline. Eveline, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. No, it attracts your dog. You should be really aware. If you have just put like a roasted chicken on the counter on the island because you're about to divvy it up for your family or whatnot, there's a higher likelihood of your dog going to check out what's up there. You do need to be aware and know your dog well, because that anticipation of being, on top of things is going to be really important. So I think knowing what attracts your dog is really, really important. And the only way you know that is by having good supervision, which perhaps you were going to get into.
Right.
Next.
Well, even before that, management. Like, how are you going to manage what sort of tools? Mm-hmm. Anytime you're not sure what the outcome could be, anytime you think your dog could choose the wrong thing, it's really important that you're managing them appropriately. So for our young dogs in training, what do we always use with them? What's something we always use?
So it's really important when we have any age of dog, doesn't matter what age, but it's great if you can start with them as a young puppy, because they don't learn the behaviors wrong first, is having some type of leash or house line or line on your dog in training. Now, McCann Dogs refers to this as a house line. So we have specific leashes that we'll use for different reasons. And one of the things that we will teach our dogs about having just general manners in the house is having a house line. And what's special about the house line is that it's not too long. It's short enough that it can bebop and zip around your house pretty easily, but it's long enough that if you need to reach out and take a hold of it or reach out and step on it, you're able to do that. And our house leashes don't have a handle on the end of them. They're just sort of stops dead at the end so that it doesn't get caught on anything. And what this house line does is it enables us to follow through without actually having to physically grab or chase the dog itself. Because if you have a dog that's a bit unruly and they're jumping up and stealing things and you try and take a hold of them or scare them or all of the things that you shouldn't do. Dogs will either react two ways. They'll either run away and then they avoid, the consequence in the first place, which means they're probably going to do it again. Or they think it is a big, giant game and they'll turn and start jumping on you. And then it turns into this big show. If you have a house sign on and you're able to stand on it or you're able to grab it with your hands, you can diffuse the dog much more quickly. You can bring their energy down. You can redirect them to something that they shouldn't do. Your timing is better. So if you have a dog in training that is prone to making poor choices in the house, jumping on the counters or jumping up people being one of them, it is imperative that if they are not being confined in some way and they're getting the opportunity to be, loose in the kitchen or wherever this jumping situation is happening, they should have a house line attached to their collar at all times. And our golden rule with our puppies when we're raising them is our dogs wear a house line for months and months and months during their training phase until I can't remember the last time I needed to use it for something. At that point, I would start to wean off of it. When I've trained through all of the different proofing scenarios and my puppy now listens really well to my voice, they're not jumping up anymore, they're making great choices. At that point, I would graduate to having my dog, loose without anything on in the house. Okay. But that's the importance of it.
Yeah, the house line is going to be the game-changing tool, but something we hear from a lot of people is exactly what Polly Prissy Pants says. Doug is quickly chewed through 3 house lines. How do we prevent that to keep the line on while in the house?
Okay, we're not supervising our puppy close enough.
This is a critical step because just simply putting on a management tool isn't going to change anything.
The line itself isn't magic. Yeah. It's the training that the line allows you to do that is magic. And when we hear people say, well, my dog just chews through it, don't let your puppy chew through it. It's the same thing. Yeah. If my puppy's chewing on a house line, I'm going to react the same way as my dog chewing on my $300 pair of shoes that I'm going to,
Do you have a $300 pair of shoes?
Oh, I don't know. I might actually. Or, my remote control for my TV or whatever it might be, I'm going to be supervising my dog and interrupting that. In fact, we actually made a video just recently specifically about chewing on the house line. I think it might be a couple weeks old, a few months old maybe.
Or it might be coming up soon.
No, I think we put it out already. Okay. I'm pretty sure.
All right.
Dan, lots of loots. Lincoln.
Oh, boy.
Dance lots of links.
Dance lots of links.
We'll be able to show it with us, but show you with it. But yeah. Anyways, that is frustrating for sure.
It is frustrating,
it's completely preventable.
But knowing that anytime your puppy's out of their kennel or crate, anytime they have some freedom and you put a house line or a house leash on them, you have to be supervising them. That's the most important part. Is knowing when they make the wrong choices, because you're also going to know when they make the right choices, the stuff that you want to reinforce. This is especially important. And I know people say, well, sure, great. Stop my dog from jumping up on the counter, but they never do it when I'm in there. And this is a common complaint, and I totally understand how it may seem what?
It's so funny.
It is so funny, but I get it, but you need to think bigger picture than that.
Have higher expectations as well. If your puppy or your dog is rehearsing bad behavior not in your eyesight, they shouldn't be out of your eyesight.
Right.
Because how are you possibly supposed to give them great information about whether they're right or whether they're wrong if you're not there to do it? And there is, a right and a wrong way to progress from having a dog that is perfectly behaved in your eyesight to having them perfectly behaved when they're not in your eyesight. But I have met very few people that have dogs that are ill-behaved out of eyesight on their own that are also perfect when they're with the dog.
Right.
There's usually lots of things that the dog is still doing wrong when they're like right in front of them. And it's like you're graduating to like a university degree of giving your dog freedom of being able to make their own choices, totally independent of you, but they haven't mastered how to make all the great choices when you're actually, with them. Dogs are very, very smart. They can learn two different sets of rules, one with you there, one with you not there, rules with your husband versus rules with, your wife, rules with, you at the cottage versus at home. Dogs are incredibly situational learners. They're so smart. And often we end up putting our dogs in a scenario, and because we're humans and we think the way a human does, we think, well, if the dog can do it here, why can't the dog figure it out there? And it just doesn't work that way. Dogs need to learn through progressions, and they need to learn through, baby steps. And if I want to get to the point where I can leave my dog alone in a kitchen and expect them, or our dogs, if we have like a movie night and we have popcorn on the coffee table, when our puppies are young, we wouldn't just walk into the kitchen and leave the dog in the living room and expect them not to eat the popcorn. One of us would stay. One of us would work through it until we got to the point where we knew the dog could be trustworthy. And now we wouldn't even think about that because the dogs know the rules. But you've got to go in baby steps. People just push things too fast and then they get mad at the dog. But it's not really their fault. They actually haven't been trained to make good choices. Yeah. We can't assume it.
Yeah, and dogs, an important thing to remember is that dogs are going to do what's rewarding. So if you give them the opportunity to make the mistake and get up on the counter or eat some,
and they
eat
steal something while you're gone,
it's a lot harder to fix that problem. Yeah. So supervision and management in this first little while is going to be really, really important. However, you might need, what we do is to set up a situation where your dog has to choose. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, I love this because it means we're bringing cheese slices in the house. And I do love the odd cheese slice sandwich. But with that said, we set the dogs up to have to make a choice when it comes to counters. Now, this isn't the thing that's going to stop your dog from ever jumping up, but it's going to force them to choose something, and then we can reinforce the good choice. Yeah. Want to talk a little bit about how we do that?
Sure. So this is sort of what I would call a proofing phase. And actually, I remember this scenario distinctly happening with an older dog that's no longer with us. His name was Hummer. And he figured out he was a pit bull border collie cross. And he was a really nice guy, but he was very food motivated. Mm-hmm. And, he was a little bit on the larger side, so tall. So it was just easier for him to kind of see what was going on up there. And he learned pretty quickly not to jump up while we were there, but he was pretty clever, and he would learn that if our back was turned or something like that there was a little bit more of an opportunity. And so what seemed to work really well with him is actually setting him up to proof through the exercise. So I put the house line on him. I would just have him in the kitchen with me, and we would take all of his favorite things and put them up on the counter. Cheese slices, drape them over the side, tennis ball, frisbee, whatever he loved, we would put it up on the counter. And I think the very first time that I did this training session, he thought he had died and got to heaven because he thought, oh my God, Mama's just put all of my favorite things,
the best things in the
on
world,
the counter. This is my lucky day. Yeah. And he wasn't too swift at the time. And of course, I was standing right there, and he went to jump up on the counter to grab the cheese that was, leaning over the end. And I was able to scold him with my voice, hey, off. And I grabbed the house sign, I gave him a little pop towards the floor, and I redirected him. And he was like, oh, I cannot believe that happened. And so he stopped for a second, and then he would walk to the counter, and he'd look at me and look at the counter, look at me, and sort of thought, and the little stinker went for it a second time. But again, I'm standing right there. I was able to have great timing. I scolded him with my voice. I stopped him with the long line again. And then after that, he just would sit there and look at me, and he was like, I am not going to try again. Now, what I did is, if I was standing right there, obviously he would, not be too stupid and not try again. But then I would just sort of pretend I was doing something with the stove. I would pretend to unload the dishwasher. I would just look busy, but I had my eye on him. Then I could see him walking around, looking at the items, looking at me. But I wanted to take an opportunity to then tell him he was right. It's very important. We firmly believe with our training that if I'm going to correct a behavior, if I'm going to tell my dog that he's made a poor choice, I must find an opportunity to say, that was wrong, but buddy, this is right. Yeah. So as I was sort of looking busy and I could see him wanting to jump up to grab that stuff, but kind of saying, I just got in trouble for that, I shouldn't do that, I then would praise him, what a good boy, and I would call him over to me and I would reward him and I would make it a really good choice. And he learned really quickly that connecting with me, checking in with me, listening to me was far more rewarding than jumping up on the counter. When he jumped up the counter, he was corrected for that. When he was redirected to me and making good choices, he got lots of rewards and I would reinforce him for making better choices. And I think I had to do that maybe twice. And then that was it.
I know, but you're a great dog trainer, and I know the thing that the difference. I know a lot of people at home struggle. Like, well, I mean, you guys just solved this problem in 7 minutes. How my dog doesn't listen as well. Yeah. So I think where a big part of the challenge lies for you at home is that you don't quite understand the value of what Kale just mentioned. Mm-hmm. So she talked about the exercise and exactly what she'd do. She set Hummer up so that he had to make a choice. He made the wrong choice. When she talked about using the leash, it's down, not back. Yes. You know, that leash goes down, not back, so because you don't want to pull the dog over backwards. But then she did the most important part of this entire thing is she pretended like she was busy. You need this sort of in-between training phase where you learn, the skills, you practice the exercise, all the formal stuff, but then you need some kind of, real life opportunity. What's the word I'm looking for? NTO. Natural training opportunity. Oh. You need a natural training opportunity to apply some of this stuff. But it also appears to your dog like, geez, they're busy. Now, dogs are opportunists, and they'll take advantage of whatever situations you give them to, sneak that sandwich off of out of your kid's hand or whatever. So you need to take advantage of some of these natural training opportunities. You need to set them up, create them so that if you're always having a problem when you're making dinner and your dog's getting into trouble, if you're always having difficulty when you're on your phone Zoom calls because you're work from home and it's 11 o'clock and your dog's barking, like you need to set up these situations so that they look like you're committed, you're time committed, you're distracted, but you're actually in training mode. Yeah. If you're in your training mode and you're doing a great job of acting, and maybe this is your opportunity to become some sort of like real reality TV
extra
star
in your own movie.
That's right. But your focus is actually on your dog. This is that bridge between the moments when you're working the skills and real life this is where you get the wins. Really focus on these natural training opportunities.
Can I add one more thing? And we're going to say this more than once because it's going to come up when we work with the
I would
people.
love for that to happen.
Okay. Is I just want to highlight again some of the technique pieces that are going to be so important that, again, allowed me to be able to fix this problem in 2 training sessions. As Ken had said, number one, when I use the leash, as he had mentioned, the technique is to make sure that I'm pulling the leash or popping on the leash down towards the floor because I'm not trying to hurt the dog. I'm trying to get the dog down. The second thing is when I used the line on Hummer to let him know jumping up was wrong, he never was successful at getting his paws and his head up on the counter. And this is really, really important because a lot of people say, well, I pull my dog off the counter all of the time, right, and nothing ever changes. And the reason for that is, yes, you might stop them in the moment, but they've already had that self-reward ability of getting up and being able to see what's on the counter, or lick what's on the counter, or smell what's on the counter, or whatever it might be. If you're always getting your dog off the item, your timing is too slow. Okay? You're too slow. What we need to do is stop them as they're coiling, stop them as they're thinking about jumping, not after they've jumped. So when I stopped Hummer from jumping on the counter, he actually never got on top of the counter. Okay? He went to jump, and that's when I redirected him. The last technique that is really important that I sort of flew over is when I was rewarding him for making good choices, I was rewarding him for connecting away from the counter. So if he goes to jump up and I say, hey, don't do that, I'm not going to feed him checking out what's up there. I'm going to actually turn him away and teach him anything away from the counter is what's rewarding. I would call him away from the counter to reward him. Whatever he wants to get into, the reinforcement, the positive reinforcement is going to happen away from whatever the dog naturally wants to gravitate towards. And these seem like little things, but they're big things. And sometimes dogs can get confused because when we're trying to train them, we miss some of these little details that, that's why it takes you session after session after session after session, rather than having great timing, great technique, all of that stuff. And we can, get through it a lot faster.
This is especially important when we're talking about dogs jumping on people.
Yeah.
Because how many at home do you have a dog who just loves people? Who just can't wait for someone to scratch their head or, give them a good belly rub or whatever. If you have a dog that's naturally gratified by being that close to people and being interacted with, you have your work cut out for you when it comes to jumping up on people, because the moment they do it, the moment they get to the person, that's the reward.
Yeah.
They're so gratified by the behavior. So let's talk a little bit about a strategy for working on through your dog jumping up on people. We're gonna take a look at a video that we shot previously that we're gonna talk through, and then we're gonna apply it to some of your questions and comments in the chat.
I just want to say one thing. How do you say that? Stellarina? I just think this is important to address now, just so that you, great suggestion on the house line. How do you implement that when they are over a year old?
Great.
You just do it exactly the same way. So don't, we usually say this on every train station, but, we often will refer to puppy training because that's the majority of dogs that we work with. However, don't get stuck on the age. If your dog doesn't have the behavior and they are 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, you're going to train it exactly the same way as you would a puppy. So if your dog needs to learn some of these skills and they're a year old, just throw that house line on. You're going to do exactly the same thing. There's no difference.
Anytime we've brought an older dog into our home, into our family, regardless of their age, a house line goes on or a leash goes on. We put them in situations where we can manage because we don't know. We can't be sure they're going to make the right choices. So
it's more about the dog's experience level and less about their actual age.
Totally. Okay, so we have a couple great questions in here. Certainly, Star Trek fan super chat up front, turning the train station orange, yellow, turning the train station orange,
that's
or yellow.
Ken's colorblind,
and no, a little bit. And we need to talk about jumping up on people. So let's dive into the training target idea. And this is for anyone who's got a dog that jumps up on people, gets really excited when people are around. Maybe it's a little bit out of control. We're going to give you some foundational steps, and then we're going to just sort of modify it out a little bit to apply it to a lot of other situations. But I really like this this clip because it's a great way to...
Oh, yeah, this is a great clip. Look like
you're going to see.
I look like
at you.
Ridiculous.
Because it gives
also great.
It gives you a sense of the timing. Because the timing is one of the more important parts that you're going to learn with stopping your dog from jumping up on people. Okay, get our high-tech listening headphones here. Ready to go?
Do you know what a target looks like? I want you to think about those different areas as different thresholds that you can use with your dog to make things either easier or more challenging as your dog's training progresses. So if you look at the biggest circle on a target, it's usually the easiest one to achieve. It's going to be the same thing with your dog training. If you're working with your dog around other people, think about having those people stay in the biggest area of the target, the furthest away from your dog, in order for your puppy to be.
So, considering all that we've talked about already, why do you think Kale suggests to start with your helper, your neighbor, your friend, maybe a casual observer? There's been lots of occasions where we've talked with students and coached students through, I don't know when people are going to come up. I don't know what to say when, I say, hey, can you not pet my dog right now? Invite people to help you with training. If they're dog lovers, they're going to be so excited about the opportunity. But if someone approaches you, and this is from a longer video.
Now, if they're at a distance and your dog is able to sit on a loose leash, they're able to check in with you, they're able to be attentive, you can then have that person close into the middle part of that target. They can come in a little bit closer. And this is really where you're going to need to work your butt off. Now, it doesn't all need to be perfect. It's okay if somebody starts to get close and your dog makes an error, but what you do about that error is going to make all of the difference. Let's talk first steps. So you're out for a walk with your dog happens to see somebody at a distance. You can kind of tell they're going to come in to want to say hello to your dog. What's the first thing that you should do? Well, the first thing you need to do is get your dog's attention before they get locked on to that distraction. So I might interrupt her, I might use a bit of food. Hey pup, what's this? Hey, hi, what's this? And I might lure her into my side and go to a control exercise that she's been working on. So she understands that when she's sitting at my side, yes, that she needs to remain in that position even though there's distractions around. And this.
So why is it so important for a new dog owner, or a dog owner that's working through this exercise, to have their dog in a control position?
It's really important because your dog needs a way to be right. They need to be given a task that they can focus on, that they can achieve, that they can be right. But equally as important, the human, the handler, the owner, needs to have something that can be a black and white rule that they can use to follow through it. The dog is either sitting or they're not. And this allows the person to be a little bit more consistent because there's a clear expectation that they set out for the dog to do, and then it's easier for them to follow through. That rhymed.
No, I wish I was paying attention.
I know. But again, having the dog sit is a great way to give them a particular task that's easier to control their emotions. You know, if I chose a moving exercise where me and the dog were moving, for some dogs it's just a little bit too much freedom. That could be something that I could progress to with a bit more advanced training, but in the early stages, if this is a really struggling point for your dog, the sit at the side is just the best way to start.
It also helps you to be right. You know, we're professional dog trainers, so we've worked through these exercises thousands of times before, but this might be the first time you've ever dealt with something like this. So to make it easier for you, get into this control position. It's going to take away a lot of those variables. And
I should say that, like this little border collie's name is Euchre, and I had already done lots of training with her without any people around to sit at my side. So you can see she understands already before taking on big distractions like people. She knows to sit at my side on a loose leash and to look at me. Now, she's not going to be perfect in the video because she's only like a 6-month-old puppy in this video, but it's another thing. You're going to do pre-training to work on conquering distractions and skills. You don't go into a hard situation with no training and no skills underneath your belt.
Right. Yeah. So in a situation like this, if you have a dog that's absolutely going crazy for people or crazy in the environment, you need to put yourself in a training target situation. Yeah. You need to get somewhere in the green. That might be your backyard. Maybe it is in your living room. It doesn't matter where that place is, but you need to get put yourself in a situation and have your dog in a position where you can be successful. Yeah. It's really important that they understand how to be right first. Really important. In fact, and if you want to know, if you want to learn some of that foundational stuff, if you want to get your dog started off on the right foot, so that, sometimes jumping up isn't a problem. If it is, you've got some of the tools to deal with it more quickly. You can check out our online training, online life skills, online puppy essentials. Dive in there. You get daily feedback from a professional dog trainer, coaching calls, all the rest. But if you are feeling like you're still struggling with this and it's going on and on and on, online training in our online training programs might be exactly right for you. Okay, let's dive back into this.
This is an obedience skill that we drill into them when they're young to help teach emotional control. So my dog's in the control position, and as that person approaches, I'm just going to say, hey, how's it going? Just hold on, wait there.
Look at that guy's hair, too. Not very trustworthy, I'd say.
It's beautiful.
Not very trustworthy.
1 second, I'm just going to instruct them to just sort of stop at a distance. Good girl. Okay, come a little closer. Yes, good girl. Good sit. Yes. And my focus is going to be more on the dog and less on the person. Now,
that is such an important part, and it's going to be especially important for you as you're working through this. Your attention and focus is entirely on your dog. So this is where like a little bit of that pre-coaching is going to come in with that friend, family member, maybe it's that stranger. Say like, just take a couple steps in and then stop for me, and then you start your training exercise.
Notice that crazy haired man is he's being neutral. He's not, squeaking or snapping or bending over with his hands out trying to pet the puppy at all. He's just standing there being very neutral. And this is really, really important when you're trying to train this exercise, because what we're trying to do, and you'll hear us say this 1,000 times over, especially if you follow us on a regular basis, is when we're trying to teach a skill and we want our dogs to do it well, we want to start in the early stages by setting the dog up to be successful. So we're slowly making it hard on the dog. So if that guy, I just want to say your name, is standing that close, he's not also going to stand that close and like be trying to make the dog make an error. He's just being close is hard enough for some dogs. Maybe we could work towards acting a little bit more like a normal person by bending over and saying, "Oh, what a cute puppy," and all that stuff that drives our puppies crazy. But we can control how difficult we make it by setting this up to have somebody help us.
Would you find it helpful if we made a video that talked about how to coach friends, family member, like how to coach people as you're training your dog? Let me know in the chat if that's something that you would find helpful, because I know it's something that we discuss with our students often, is like these little tactics.
They often say, "Well, people don't greet my dog like that. They bend over and they make it so hard."
Yeah, and it makes me think we should maybe reshoot something like this with a little bit more animated helper.
That's where you have to be an advocate for your dog.
Right, so talk about that.
Yeah, like I think it's important that if you're training your dog, like whenever I'm out and about and I'm training out and about, did I sound Canadian there? I'm always, if people want to say, "Can I come up and pet your puppy?" I'm always saying to them, "Yep, you can. Just give me 1 second at work. I'm working on training, my dog to not jump up. Will you help me?"
Yeah.
And, as soon as, "Oh yeah, sure, I'd love to." And then I will just sort of give them some suggestions. I'll say, "Just come and stand here for a second. Don't look at her quite yet. Don't get too close. I'll let you know when to say hello."
Don't look at the puppy.
Yeah, exactly. I just take control of the situation. I'm polite, that type of thing. But I also, don't just let them come up and bend over my puppy or put their hands out. I've trained all kinds of different types of dogs. I've trained dogs that have been over the top excited about people, where they just can't maintain their brain. The last border collie that we had, her name's Beeline. She's 8 years old now, but when she was a puppy, she was actually nervous of people. Yeah. And, people coming up and getting right in her space was like her worst nightmare when she was a little baby puppy. And so I had to advocate for her and not put her in a situation that was too overwhelming. So I would, encourage people to stand at a distance so I could reward her until she was feeling more relaxed and comfortable. And then I could let people slowly approach. And honestly, for the first couple of months, I didn't let people approach her because she wasn't ready for that yet. So, our dogs are our first priority, and we must advocate for them because we don't want to just put them in a situation where they're going to have a hard time, and that could lead to bigger things down the road.
Yeah, it's also going to be easier for you.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to work more than you have to.
On the person. Now, if I see that she's over distracted and she can't hold that sit.
Okay, how many feel at home right now that, "Oh, that's definitely my dog"? Like that my dog, as soon as they saw the person, they would move. Because this is some feedback that we get as well.
Yep.
And when we're working through this in our training classes, we're really aware of what's that line, what's that threshold that the dog can be successful at, and that they as we build the relationship with the dog and their owner, how close can we get? So watch what Kel puts the dog back right away, and there's no muss, there's no fuss. She just gets put back into the position where she started.
I'm just gonna ditch the food, and I'm just. You're like melting. Sit, good girlie. I'm going to place her back into that sitting position. And once she's on a loose leash, there's my pupperoonie. I'm going to yes and reward once again. Okay, you can come in and try again. Sit, yes. Now, if she's able to hold the sit as that person gets close, I can then say, all right, you can pet her. Good girl. Oops. Oopsie. So I want her to maintain that sit, even though she's being patted. So she gets up. The opportunity to be patted sort of is not on the table anymore. Try again. Yes, good girl. Yes, good girl. Yes. Now the next thing that I can do is I also could give her permission to go and say hello. But when I do that, I'm going to keep my leash.
For a second. Remember when I said back about the counter surfing thing when I was rewarding the dog, and how I reward the dog when I'm rewarding the dog, you'll notice that I was letting Euchre look at Ken there, but I was rewarding her nonstop at the hardest part of the exercise. And that was Ken was close and he was touching her. You could see as long as she was making a good choice, I wasn't standing there crossing my fingers and hoping that she would stay. I was being proactive and feeding and praising and letting her know. So she would go, oh, sitting here is what earns the reward. It's really important in that moment when it's the distraction is the hardest, that's when I'm giving my puppy or my dog the most information. So I wasn't just leaving her out hanging out to dry there. I was rewarding her. I also wasn't forcing her to sit. If you would look at her leash was completely loose on her collar. She was making all of her own choices to sit, and I was rewarding for that. But if she stopped making that choice and she was to get up, you can see I could place her back. And just the last thing I want to say about this is so many people will just ask the dog to sit again, or they'll pull out treats to get the dog to sit again, and then the dog just learns to keep rehearsing the behavior because there's really no consequence. So I use the word consequence very generally here. I'm not getting angry with her. I'm not doing anything over the top. I'm simply just showing her what I want by placing her back so that she learns I get up, she puts me back, I stay, I get fed. It is literally that easy. I'm not complicating it by adding a whole bunch of other bits and bobs of information.
And remember, we talked a little bit about the training target just a couple of minutes ago. And when I'm in this close, when your helper is in this close, this is the training zone. So it's a really dynamic time. If your dog is hyper focused on your helper, if your dog is constantly braking, just can't remain in position, what do you think you need to do? You need to get out into the green. You need to back away from that target. You need to get to a point where your dog can be successful. It's really important that you are, again, Kale's hyper-focused on the dog in training. And if you are continue to struggle, that's not training. You know, you need to be successful.
To be calm. Now, another issue that we've had with Euchre is that if she's starting to feel a little bit overexcited, sometimes she'll actually submissively pee, and it's even worse if people are squeaking and squawking and bending over top of her. So I'll often just encourage people to either stand up tall or bend down and sort of keep their body upright, and then I'll let her go and say hello. Good. Okay, good. Go say hi. Okay, go say hi.
Hi, buddy.
Off. Good girl. Good. Off.
So
Yes.
I used off proactively there.
Yeah.
Before she went to go jump, I reminded her off rather than waiting for her to jump up and then saying it. I tried to say it proactively.
Okay, let's talk about applying this.
Yeah, I just want to say there's a few people in the chat that are asked. Oh, sorry. We almost got hit by a train there. There's a few people in the chat that are saying, well, what do I do when it's like other dogs? My dog's jumping on other dogs, or like, am I supposed to make my dog sit if there's another dog around? That's like honestly, we could do a whole different live stream on that. That's like a completely different topic. I want you to keep the advice that we're talking to right now. This is specifically, has nothing to do with other dogs. As soon as you bring other dogs into the picture, there's a whole other element of dog behavior, reading dog behavior, dog to dog thing. We can definitely talk about that at a different time, a different live stream.
Way more importantly, don't put your dog in that situation where they're going to be approached by other dogs. You know,
if you're not
if you can.
ready to deal with that.
Totally.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people are asking about that, but this is a more pointed, directed conversation to people.
Yeah, it's, it brings up the point. We cover a lot of topics on our YouTube channel, but for the things that are inherently nuanced, for the stuff that's really important and could really go the wrong way if you don't get exactly the right information, we don't even talk about it here on YouTube. We go to, this is where we have, like Zoom calls, and we have actual training for you and your dog.
Yeah, so. Like we have full-fledged, like our YouTube videos are obviously awesome. But we're speaking to the general person and the general dog, and we're not telling the entire story. We're giving you as much information in a short period of time in the most entertaining way that we possibly can.
That's right.
Because that's what YouTube wants us to do, and that's what we love to do. However, when it comes to our full-fledged programs, Puppy Essentials, Life Skills, what we're able to do, because we actually get to know you and your dog, we can give more specific information. This is especially important when it comes comes to dog interaction. Something that I would tell this person and this dog to do might be completely different than what I would tell that person and that dog to do, because they have a different personality of dog. So that's sort of why the programs can be really, really helpful. The other thing too is, like, sometimes people will say, well, I'm doing exactly what I see you doing in the video. And you think you might be doing that, but you're probably not. And so when we have programs, you come to class, or you have online classes, and you send in videos and we can watch you. We can literally break down exactly where the mistake or the problem is happening, and we can get you on the right track. So, yeah, I think it's important to understand that.
Yeah, so this is an important thing to pick up. I'm a Life Skills Essentials online student. My puppy's already at week 7 with skills.
Nice.
But when she is frustrated, she jumps and lunges at me. So Star Trek fan, this is exactly the kind of thing we want you in the group chatting about with your instructors.
Yeah.
Like, this is where they can give you specific information. But it is important to know that, sometimes you just got to sort of lay down the law.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that your dog understands that they need to remain in that sitting position. I would place them back in that position and try to get a win before I break it off. The other thing I might do is, I'm thinking that your dog is frustrated isn't really the right way to look at this, but try to get, shorter training exercises so that you don't feel like you're putting your dog in a situation where they're tired of the training, where they're not interested in doing the thing. Got to keep it light, fun, and fast, but this is the perfect kind of question for tomorrow morning that we can talk about. From Tony, I actually picked this one up because I think it's really important, and it speaks to management. And as soon as we walk in the door, bam, I step in and he's on me or the person entering the door.
Yep.
This is so important because let's talk about management for dogs like this.
As long as you continue to walk in the door with your pup or your dog just hanging out, ready for you to come home, and the dog's able to jump up and rehearse jumping on you, this will be a problem that you'll have forever. So you have a couple ways to go about this. Number one, if your dog doesn't understand not to jump up in that scenario, you shouldn't give them the opportunity to be in that scenario. So, pup or dog needs to be left in the crate while you leave, so that when you come back into the house, the dog's in a crate and not jumping up on you, until you can work through it. And then to work through it, you're going to have 2 ways. You could leave a line on the dog, and you could come in the house and immediately ask the dog to sit or to off once you've trained that behavior. And then you could reward the dog, have the line there so you could step on it with your foot and stop the dog from jumping up in the first place. Or you could do the same thing and have a second person in the house controlling the leash and the line so that you can stop the dog from jumping up. But if you don't have a line on, if you haven't really worked through teaching the dog what they should be doing instead, you come in and the dog's just at a heightened state now, and you're actually trying to then train your dog to do something, it's just not going well.
Yeah, this brings me back to the early in the conversation tonight. We talked about set up the situations.
Yeah.
Build this into a training scenario.
Go outside and walk inside the house 15 times in a row.
Call your neighbor. Get them to come in the house while you're in training mode. Figure out some way to time when someone's coming in and you can train through it. Really, really important. We might seem like we're hurrying up a little bit, but I just realized how late it is, and we're going to miss the 8:38 train out of here if we don't zip along. So let's talk a little bit about jumping on the couch. Number one, management. Got to have your house line on. If you don't know what the outcome is going to be, you need to have a great way to manage it. So have your house line on your dog or puppy so that you can put them in a situation where they can be successful, but you can manage it easily if they make the wrong choice. Use off even before they jump. We talked about it with counters. We talked about it with people. Catching them at that point, you're much more likely to be successful, and your dog's going to start to think, this person's a mind reader. I better not take any chances. They seem to know what I'm going to do even before I do it. One of the most powerful and important things, and maybe you've done it tonight, which it just makes me feel good about putting on these train stations. If this is the case, give them a job to do. Let's talk about when we have a puppy in the house or a dog in training, and we want to watch the F1 show on Netflix.
Yeah. What we'll teach our dog to do is that when we're in the living room and we're watching TV, what should they be doing in that moment? And, early on, we'll have a dog bed out at our feet with maybe a Kong filled with peanut butter or one of their favorite chew bones, and I'll just have them lay on the bed. I'll step on the line so they can't just, cruise around the living room, and they can lie and chew on a bone, and they can sort of learn to self-settle a little bit. And if they want to get up and do their own thing, I'll just encourage them to lie back down on the bed and chew their bone. Again, the line's there so they can't go and do their own thing. And if the pup just can't self-settle, then I'll just throw them in the crate for that time and then maybe try again. Or I'll tire the dog out. Before we're winding down, we'll go outside and play fetch for a little bit, or we'll do some things that's more active. So by the time we're starting to transition to a calmer period of time, my puppy's ready to do that. And that's going to make a big difference.
Using the crate when you can't train, it's a great opportunity. Tiring out the puppy beforehand you're setting the dog up to be more successful. Yeah. It's maybe you do that in between thing. Maybe you're not really sitting down to watch the show. Maybe you're watching something else. Or you've got something just playing on TV, and this is where you're training through this exercise. But give your dog a job to do. If they commit the crime, then you've just got to tell them off, remove them from the thing, but know that it might get more difficult next time. Someone mentioned earlier that every time I sit on the couch, puppy comes up and puts her paws and her face on me. That's a difficult thing to solve unless you've pre-planned for it. So maybe they go in their kennel, maybe they get a job, maybe they go lie down, maybe they get a chew bone so that when you can watch TV. But you're setting the expectations here. If you don't want that behavior, that's okay. Mm-hmm. And you're just going to have to plan around it. I bring this up because Don Dolan mentioned the difference between jumping on and jumping up. My 90-pound Bernedoodle bounces like Tigger when people come over to my property and clearly wants to smell their faces. No paws on. Now, the reason that's important is, what are your expectations for this exercise? There's no real threat there, but I'd be very uncomfortable if I were going over to a friend's house and a 90-pound Bernedoodle were jumping up in front of me. I don't want that behavior. So, let's talk about specifics, and then we can talk about big picture.
Yeah, I would just deal with it literally the exact same way as if the dog was jumping on rather than up. Yeah. I would give the dog something else to do, like sit. And if my dog's at a heightened state because they're overexcited, maybe we're going to work that controlled sit much further away from the person, and with high value rewards to make sitting as equally or as more rewarding as jumping up. And then I can move my threshold closer to the person as my dog starts to say, woo, this sitting stuff is really, really great.
And use that long line. There. Use that long line so that you have control.
Even with a dog that's that big.
Yeah, for sure. You want to be able to have control. Or maybe you dive in the life skills program and you get an incredible recall so that when that great big Bernedoodle goes running out to greet your friends and family, you say, come, and they come zipping right back to you, and everyone goes, what? Mm-hmm. That's what we're aiming for anyway. All right, the 8:38 is going to be here in 3 minutes. I want to thank you guys for joining us here in the train station. We do this every couple of weeks. We're excited to have some fun, sit down, have a chat with you. And if this is your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you play music for your dog, or if you have a dog who gets a little bit unsettled or anxious when you're crate training or when you're leaving the home, we actually built out a YouTube channel and a music channel just for you. We had the same kind of struggle with one of our dogs when we were traveling. We noticed that turning on music was great, but we'd come back and it was some weird playlist with all sorts of loud music. So we worked with some music producers to make music for dogs. It fills the space. We used the tones, the beats per minute. We did all the things to make sure that this is the kind of music that fills the space, that relaxes the dog, takes some of the abrupt sounds out of the environment. After the end of tonight's live stream, when we hit the stop button, you're going to be sent there or offered to go over there to check out McCann Dog's music channel. Make sure you check it out if you have a dog that's sensitive. Totally free. You can stream us on Spotify and Apple Music. I think we're getting, tens of 50,000 streams a month. We're excited to be able to help out those of you who have some of the same challenges that we do when it comes to a noise-sensitive dog every once in a while. Otherwise, if you're working on some of these exercises, we hope to see you on our Life Skills or our Puppy Essentials program. We hope to see you on Saturday morning when we launch a new video. Anything you wanted or needed to include?
Nope. Sounds good.
In that case, with all of the teaching, all of the training, all of the things we've talked about tonight, the rest, my friends, well, that is up to you.